I never thought I'd say this seriously, but after everything I've found, I have no doubts left. They were here before the Egyptians, and they weren't just here. They left something behind. Stone structures that couldn't have been built in that era, technologies that didn't exist back then, symbols no one can explain, and artifacts that keep disappearing from museums a little too conveniently. I'll show you only real discoveries, only what actually exists, and if you watch this until the end, you won't be able to look at Egypt the same way as before. I definitely can't. Hey, my friend, you're on the Kurtop channel. 3 vanished artifacts. When engineer Wayman Dixon descended into a narrow passage inside the Great Pyramid in 1872, he hardly expected to stumble upon one of Egypt's strangest mysteries. From a deep ventilation shaft only a few inches wide, he retrieved 3 objects: a stone ball, a copper hook, and a piece of cedar wood, all primitive in appearance. But that's what raises questions. Why were these items hidden in a hard-to-reach shaft? And who put them there, and how? Later, called the Dixon Relics, these finds quickly became shrouded in myths. The stone is perfectly smooth, seemingly carved, and the hook's odd shape resembles a tool rather than a relic. But the wooden fragment became the most mysterious part of the story. After its transfer to Edinburgh, it vanished for decades. A piece of the wood was only accidentally found in a box among forgotten collections in the 2020s. Analysis indicated it was over 5,000 years old, possibly predating the pyramid itself. Why is this rarely mentioned, and why is no one rushing to investigate? It seems these 3 objects are not the key to the sarcophagus, but to something more ancient, more frightening, to a secret that the pyramid still hides from us. A person can't get in there. Inside the Great Pyramid. For decades, some strange passages were believed to be ventilation shafts, but neither air nor people can pass through them. These shafts start in the so-called Queen's Chamber and extend upward at a sharp angle, ending in stone plugs with copper fittings. At first, they weren't even taken seriously, but later, a robot was sent in there. In 1993, engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink designed a mechanism that was able to crawl inside. It moved along the smooth walls as if the shaft had been specially polished. At journey's end, the robot found a stone slab with 2 rod-like handles, suggesting something hidden behind it, but it was urgently recalled. The archaeologists remained silent. The Egyptian authorities did not grant permission for another attempt, and Gantenbrink was simply removed from the project. The second robot, launched later, drilled a tiny hole, and behind it, there was another chamber. It's unclear if it was empty or if no one wants to reveal what was inside. These shafts couldn't have been used in anyone's lifetime. They are too narrow, but they are perfect for storing something that was meant to remain untouched. The Great Void above the Grand Gallery subtitles. In 2017, the world was shaken by the news that an unknown chamber had been discovered inside the Great Pyramid using Muon tomography. It is located right above the Grand Gallery and is comparable to it in size, about 30 meters long. This isn't just a crack or technical gap, it's an actual empty space, seamlessly built into the architecture. Strangely, it's totally isolated, no entrance, exit, access, or attempts to open it. Scientists from the Scan Pyramids project named the discovery the Great Void. They stress they don't know what's inside. It could be a hidden room, ritual space, or secret corridor. However, something is delaying further research. Over 7 years have passed and no one has drilled through the wall, used a drone, or found the secret. There is a theory that inside there might be something that could completely change our understanding of when the pyramid was built, its purpose, or even its creators, who may have lived long before ancient Egypt. That's a frightening prospect, because if the Great Void is a sealed capsule of knowledge, then everything we know about the pharaohs might just be a cover story. The text remains locked inside. A tomb that remains unopened. Everyone knows about the Sphinx, but almost no one knows that there is probably a cavity beneath it, sealed and even partially concreted over. Back in the 1990s, geophysicist Tomasz Dobecki conducted acoustic probing of the plateau beneath the Sphinx's front paws and discovered an anomaly, a hollow chamber with clear rectangular edges. It couldn't have been a natural formation. It was a room or a tomb or something else. This news rocked the world of alternative archaeology. The claims went even further. Ancient Egyptian texts refer to a hall of records where knowledge left by the gods before the flood was stored. It might be right there beneath the Sphinx. One step could have opened the door to a prehistoric past, but instead there was only silence. Egyptian authorities denied excavation permits and closed the site to research. Unconfirmed reports say the shaft at the Sphinx's base was filled with concrete without explanation. Why is unclear, perhaps not because there is nothing there, but because they know exactly what is there. An eye, a mountain shaped like a diagram. Sometimes the mystery isn't buried, but on the surface, right before your eyes. If you view the Giza complex from above and overlay the Eye of Horus, the ancient Egyptian symbol of omniscience, the lines align. The layout of the pyramids, Sphinx, Queen's Chamber, shafts, and Grand Gallery forms a shape resembling this sacred symbol. The eye's center aligns with the Great Void, the tear with the descending corridor, and the strokes with the shafts. Is this truly a coincidence? In Egyptian tradition, the Eye of Horus is more than a symbol. It's a diagram of the universe. Its parts are responsible for vision, hearing, taste, speech, touch, and thought. And it is these 6 parts that supposedly correspond with mathematical precision to the structure of the corridor inside the pyramid. It wasn't modern esotericists who first discussed this, but mathematicians and architects who seriously analyzed the internal structure. If we assume that the pyramid was not a tomb, but a repository of knowledge, it is possible that it is encoded as a giant 3-dimensional model. Desert tunnels leading nowhere. There is a place in Egypt where tourists are not allowed, not because it's dangerous, but because there are too many questions there. Just south of the Giza complex, beneath sand, lies a network of tunnels that have been filled in and forgotten or possibly deliberately buried. For years, locals have mentioned empty halls under the sand, where echoes, drafts, and even smells suggest air below. Officially, nothing is there, and anything accidentally found was quickly covered up again. In the 2010s, a group of researchers received a rare permit for ground-penetrating radar scanning and discovered long, straight structures beneath the surface. Corridors, some turning, tens of meters long and about 5 meters deep, all strictly parallel to the main axis. A fee. Once the data reached the press, the permit was revoked, cameras removed, and the sand replaced. There are photos showing that some of the steps began in crevices, among old ruins, stone descents, steps seemingly leading down, all of it roughly sealed with cement and bricks. On one of these walls, someone scratched the word silence in English with a nail. Muted. No one knows who wrote it. But too much points to the fact that Egypt is not what lies on the surface, but what is beneath it. And it's very important to someone that we don't go down there. The pyramid that wasn't built. If the pyramid of Khufu had been built during Khufu's own time, we would have inscriptions, images, or at least mentions of it in sources. But nothing like that exists. Not a single hieroglyph inside the pyramid says who built it. No scenes of construction, no frescoes, no instructions, no thanks to the gods, just empty walls and strange precision. When researchers began comparing the dates, they discovered something else. The masonry technology in the Pyramid of Khufu is more precise than in the later pyramids built 100 years afterward. The stone blocks are fitted with less than a millimeter of error. Some weigh up to 60 tons and are placed dozens of meters high without adhesives or tool marks, using architectural methods we can't replicate today. Even now, no crane, elevator, or thousands of slaves can explain this. Here's the theory. What if the pyramid already existed and the pharaoh just claimed it? Maybe he added something, but the foundation, voids, and perfect cardinal orientation aren't from his era. They're from something older, more precise, perhaps not even human. Some scientists call this a structural anachronism, but basically this pyramid doesn't fit the era, logic, or history. The artifacts they show, you might be surprised, but not all archaeological finds make it to museum displays. Some disappear, even before they are officially documented. There are no press releases about them, they're not on television, and they don't appear in scientific catalogs. They're lost or hidden. Sometimes it's by order from above, sometimes to avoid causing problems, and sometimes because no one wants to explain what these things even are. During a 1970s expedition, which a former Cairo museum assistant mentioned by accident, they discussed finding a copper disc. On its surface, there were symbols that couldn't be matched to any known script. The object was stored, then lost a month later. Later, photos were found of the disc in what looked like a star map, but it wasn't ours. Evidence shows that 5th Dynasty burials contained objects made of unknown alloys that can't be analyzed. An archaeologist with a copy of the report claimed it was not bronze, gold, or silver, but something else. No one knows where they are. Some might say it's a myth, but then why is access to the Cairo Museum's storage closed to most researchers, and why can't even Egyptian scientists get in there without special permission? These items could explain a lot or cast too much doubt on things. Psychoactive vessels. In 2024, archaeologists found a vessel in the temple of the goddess Qatar. Its walls depicted the smiling god Bes, patron of dreams, childbirth, and unexpectedly something stranger, traces of a preserved substance inside. Its chemical analysis gave an unexpected result, a mixture of alcohol, honey, and psychoactive components, including those that cause strong visual hallucinations. Essentially, it was an ancient psychotropic cocktail. Strangely, the vessel was ritualistic, and its contents weren't for pleasure, but for communication, possibly with gods, the dead, or beings the Egyptians sensed but didn't fully understand. In the same complex, images of beings with disproportionate bodies and eyes were found, too strange to be just allegories. Egyptian priests are believed to have used similar mixtures to enter special states. During these rituals, they supposedly gained knowledge that words couldn't express, these ones. From such immersions came prophecies, geometric patterns, and architectural solutions. What if the Great Pyramid is also the result of something, a revelation? The singing sarcophagi of the Serapeum. Only for this is not to survive in. It was to survive, but also for this. Not just to survive, but also for this. It was to survive. Maybe it was to survive, but also to survive. Maybe it was only to survive, but also to make human cells survive. Standing inside, the sound vibrates in your bones. Ancient priests could use this to put themselves and possibly bulls into an altered state. But then why are there half-meter thick lids polished on the inside to a mirror finish? Some suggest the boxes weren't tombs, but resonators amplifying Earth's vibrations. Their polished interiors reflected sound to create standing waves. Some researchers suggest there may have been a sound organ in the complex, a series of chambers tuned to various frequencies. If that's the case, the Serapeum is not a cemetery. It's an ancient laboratory of acoustic energy. Bes is one of ancient Egypt's strangest gods, small, bearded with his tongue out, sometimes with lion-like traits or 4 arms. He looks unlike other gods. He wasn't feared, but he wasn't fully understood either. His images are often found where people were especially vulnerable, in bedrooms, at the head of the bed, and in birthing houses. Also next to vessels that contained substances for altering consciousness. Some researchers view Bes not as a god, but as a guardian who protected people from evil spirits during sleep or rituals. But that's not all. In later Greco-Roman magical papyri, the name Bes appears in spells related to astral projection. One of the texts says, "Call upon him, and he will lead you through the fire of the stars." It is possible that the ancient Egyptians truly believed that one could leave the body, move around, and obtain some kind of information. Some call it a lucid dream, others call it the soul's second breath. Bes was thought to both protect and open the gates in this state. One depiction shows Bes in the center of a circle with 7 beings with elongated heads and large eyes around him. They are neither Egyptians nor gods from the pantheon, but unknown beings. Sometimes archaeologists find images they cannot explain. They are too strange even for mythology. In one of the temples in the Dendera area, figures were noticed on the remains of reliefs that stand out from the usual pantheon. They have long arms, big eyes, and heads shaped like water droplets. They stand in a circle with star symbols above, a person with raised hands at the center. The inscriptions are deliberately erased. This is not unique to other temples in Egypt, such as Edfu and Abydos. Underground tomb walls also depict figures unlike humans, animals, or gods. They are sometimes shown standing on platforms, surrounded by fire, or holding a sphere with sun-like rays that are clearly technical. One of the most mysterious reliefs, the so-called Dendera lamp, actually looks like something resembling a glass container with a cable from which a snake emerges. Pharaohs without DNA? You'd think it's the 21st century. We have sequencing technologies, laboratories, international teams of scientists. We can find out from a bone what a person ate, what they died from, and who their ancestors were. But there's a strange exception. Egypt, or more precisely Egyptian mummies. Since 2007, different laboratories have tried to decode the DNA of pharaohs. Some results were published but almost immediately disappeared, were revised, or were called into question. Too many things didn't add up. Tutankhamun is among the most mysterious cases. His genetic analysis caused major controversy. Officially Akhenaten's son, some experts say his DNA structure is unique. The mummies of the 18th dynasty. His haplogroup is supposedly closer to the peoples of Central Europe. Later, this information was refuted, and it was stated that it was a mistake, but the original data was never published again. The same story happened with the mummies found in Luxor, in the area of the so-called Golden City. The analysis failed completely because the material was damaged, despite the bodies being perfectly preserved. Some independent researchers claim some mummies have DNA that is not just abnormal, but also unknown and not linked to any genus or species. Even with modern labs, if we can't identify who was in the sarcophagus, maybe science isn't the problem. We might just be looking in the wrong place. Skulls not the right type? When early 20th century archaeologists systematically opened tombs in southern Egypt and Nubia, they noticed something unusual. Some of the skulls they found did not match human anatomy. Yes, they had eye sockets, a jaw, and a parietal part, but all were abnormal. Elongated occiputs, disproportionately large cranial vaults, and the absence of sutures that a normal skull should have. Some skulls were so elongated that they resembled cones, as if they had been artificially deformed. But no traces of artificial deformation were found. In the 1950s and 60s, British and French anatomists discussed these findings at closed conferences, but published little officially. Why? Maybe because these skulls weren't just found in Egypt. Similar ones turned up in Peru, Mexico, and the Caucasus. They're 2,000, 5,000 years old. Different continents and cultures, same outcome. Some think elongated skulls come from head binding. Among the Maya, this was done in infancy, but some Egyptian findings show bone structure that suggests the shape was natural. If it's not a disease, it's another species, not ours or one we've forgotten. Certain temple images reinforce this impression, depicting beings with elongated heads and special headdresses. Perhaps not to decorate, but to hide, or on the contrary, to signify. If these skulls aren't fake, a coincidence, or a deformity, who were the Egyptians living with? A letter from the future. A ceiling beam carving in one Abydos temple continues to puzzle even conspiracy theory skeptics. Next to the classic hieroglyphs, you can clearly see an outline of a helicopter, something resembling a tank or submarine below it, and an object that looks like a four-bladed drone. The detail's shape is too precise to be coincidental. Official science claims that this is a palimpsest, the result of later priests carving new symbols over the old ones. Supposedly, part of the plaster crumbled over time, and the overlapping images created an optical illusion. But then why is this illusion so clear? Why were the figures complete, and why did they resemble 20th century technology instead of abstract symbols? This isn't an isolated case. Similarly advanced images appear in the temples of Dendera and Edfu. The Dendera lamp is the best known example, a large glass bulb with conductive parts inside. Egyptologists call it a symbol of life's origin, while engineers see it as an electronics diagram or electron tube. Some inscriptions have untranslated terms, not due to forgetfulness, but because their structure doesn't match known grammar. Egyptian artifacts in Antarctica. This story sounds like science fiction, but some sources, including reports from military expeditions during World War II, point to strange discoveries in the area of Queen Maud Land in Antarctica. Among them are fragments of columns supposedly covered with hieroglyphs and remains of stone structures resembling Egyptian capitals. Officially, none of this has been recognized, and all the objects have either disappeared or have been declared natural formations. But the question remains, where did this evidence come from? One theory suggests that in ancient times, Antarctica did not exist. A 16th century map accurately depicts the continent's coastline under the ice, a level of precision matched by modern cartographers, only with satellites. How did a 1500s cartographer know this? And if not, who did he copy it from? Some alternative researchers believe that civilizations could have moved between continents long before our current ideas about migration. If Egypt really was part of a network spanning the earth, then perhaps its traces can truly be found in the most unexpected places. Where exactly? In a private report that leaked online, there was mention of a fragment of an artifact found in an icy cave, metal of an unknown alloy, engravings, and undeciphered symbols similar to Egyptian ones. But the artifact disappeared, and all members of the expedition signed a non-disclosure agreement. Metals that shouldn't exist. Metals? Ancient Egypt usually brings to mind bronze, copper, and gold, but some discoveries challenge this view. In tombs that were long considered to be fully explored, objects are sometimes found made of alloys whose chemical composition doesn't match any known from that era. One such case happened back in the 1990s. A small plate, likely a sarcophagus decoration, was found in a cache near the pyramid of Unas. It contained zinc, nickel, and a trace of aluminum. Aluminum was only widely extracted starting in the 19th century. It does not occur in pure form in nature, and its production requires high temperatures and electrolysis. What was its origin in ancient Egypt? Another example is a cylindrical object, similar to a tooltip, found in the Saqqara area. Analysis revealed rare earth metals, which remain hard to extract today. The object showed signs of wear, as if it had been used for drilling or cutting stone or wood. There were also rings, plate fragments, and sarcophagus parts. The composition is always complex, and the alloy's technology exceeds ancient Egyptian metallurgy. However, official reports on these findings were either unpublished or simply stated, the composition does not correspond to the era. Laser cutting. When you stand next to the Egyptian megaliths, the first thing that strikes you is the scale. But if you look closer, it's not the size that amazes you, but the precision. Some stone blocks, especially in the temples of Osiris in Abydos and in the underground gallery of the Serapeum, are crafted with such precision that even a modern laser would be envious. Right angles, flawless surfaces, and evenly spaced circular drill marks, as if cut by a template. On a computer numerical control machine. In Saqqara, pink granite boxes, each weighing over 70 tons, feature mirror-like interiors with perfect polish and 90-degree angles. Try to replicate that by hand with copper tools. Even today's diamond blades couldn't do this without extensive finishing. Yet it was achieved over 4,000 years ago. Some Giza blocks have both convex and concave surfaces with no mortar, yet their gaps are thinner than a blade. How did they work them if copper can't cut granite? What did the Egyptians use to cut? There are theories about vibrational technology, sound cutting, and unknown melting methods. These seem like science fiction, but the polished stone surface is real and exists. Lost cities in the Sahara. On old satellite images of the Sahara. In areas where there seems to be nothing, strange outlines began to appear. Straight lines, squares, sometimes semicircles, as if they were the bases of domes. At first, scientists attributed this to geology, but when the shapes started repeating, it became clear that this was not nature. There are many of these phantom structures. In Egypt's southwest Gilf Kabir region, now just sand, entire settlements, not just Bedouin, may have once existed. Stone, proportional, with remnants of walls where you can even make out the grid of streets. These sites are now buried and remain unexcavated, as local tribes believe it's best to avoid them. They say those are forgotten places left by those who came before the sun, tablets in the wastelands. Archaeology has a paradox. The more mysterious a find, the more likely it is to be set aside or discarded. During Tel El Amarna excavations, a flat clay tablet was found with symbols unlike hieroglyphs or Sumerian cuneiform. It was categorized as unsorted material and later disappeared, as did many similar finds. Sometimes these objects are found years later in storage, closed boxes, or even trash near excavation sites. Someone didn't want to register it, someone didn't understand, or was simply scared. According to witnesses, some tablet symbols resemble diagrams or formulas. What doesn't fit gets thrown out. That's the price of a convenient story. We can forgive the ancients for inaccuracies in cosmic alignment. We can explain mistakes, but Egypt did not make mistakes. The Great Pyramid is aligned to the cardinal points with a deviation of less than 0.05 degrees. That's more precise than most modern buildings. Achieving alignment requires more than knowing north. You must also consider Earth's precession, its axial wobble that shifts the stars over millennia. That means to build the pyramid so precisely, the builders would have had to observe the stars for centuries, or have data that shouldn't have existed. But what's even stranger is how the three main pyramids of Giza are positioned. They exactly match the shape of Orion's belt as it appeared around 10,500 before Christ. At that time, astronomical models show Orion was in the same position above the horizon. The Egyptians called Orion Sahu, the body of Osiris, the god of the afterlife. Coincidence? Another mystery about this alignment is the center pyramid. Its distance to the Earth's center between the poles and between the eastern and western meridians is minimal. This is the geographic axis of the planet. How did they determine it? Science relies on observation, trial and error, and centuries of experience. Alternatively, someone may have already known, and the pyramid could be a remnant of their tools or a marker for future returnees. A map never printed, stored in a European library archive, lost among 17th century manuscripts. A hand-drawn map shows Egypt differently, with detailed rivers, ridges, and temples, but something about it doesn't make sense. In the modern desert, where officially nothing existed, cities with names and streets are shown. Some are now just sand and rocky plateaus. Initially, researchers believed the author had made a mistake or fabricated the map when it was first digitized. However, satellite images revealed outlines resembling city shapes beneath the sand, visible only from above and not from the ground. Who left this map, and where did he get data that even Napoleon didn't have? One of the names on them matches an ancient Egyptian word meaning the gates of return. Some believe this map is copied from a much older, now lost or hidden source. And that means someone had information about an Egypt that we will never see again. The Sphinx is older than believed. The Sphinx, a famous symbol of Egypt, was carved during Khafre's reign around 2500 before Christ and is seen as the pyramid's younger brother. But more and more researchers are convinced that this is not the case. The reason lies in its body, or more precisely in the traces that remain on it. On the surface of the Sphinx, especially on the sides and the back, you can see vertical grooves, deep ones, as if it was eroded by water, not by wind, not by sand, but specifically by water. The issue is Giza hasn't had heavy rain in at least 8,000 years. Geologist Robert Schoch claims this erosion required long periods of rain, which hasn't occurred since the last ice age ended. If Schoch is right, the Sphinx could be 1,000 years older than the pyramids. Maybe it's 10,000 years old, or even more. Maybe it stood here before recorded history began, and the pyramids were built next to it later as a sign of respect or fear. It has strange proportions. Some people suggest that originally the head was different, larger, and not human, and that it was altered later, erasing what was possible. The face of someone they no longer wanted to remember, or whose name they were afraid to speak. If the Sphinx predates Egypt, our chronology collapses. as Egypt would be a continuation, not the beginning. Egypt and UFOs. Thousands of years ago, Egyptians looked at the sky and, according to texts, saw more than stars. A papyrus attributed to Pharaoh Thutmose III describes a strange event. A fiery disk appeared in the sky, emitted light, hovered, and then shot upward. This temple archive text was seen as allegory until compared with modern unidentified flying object reports. Some tomb walls display symbols that defy mythological explanation. Round objects with rays, floating figures, and strange capsules with priests leaning over them. They're never the center of attention, but always nearby, like part of daily life or fear. The Egyptians believed knowledge came from the sky. Literally, not metaphorically, believing the god of wisdom descended as an ibis. Though many texts say he shone from a heavenly boat, Osiris came on a ray of light. The term Nitaru, which we translate as gods, literally means those who came, a coincidence or a memory of something that already happened. If some coincidences aren't extreme, then maybe Egypt was not an isolated civilization. It was a beacon for those who came from outside, or for those who were supposed to return one day. We often see Egypt as the beginning, but perhaps it is actually the end or culmination of something ancient and forgotten beneath time. If this is true, then history begins with those whose names haven't survived. And everything we see today is only what they allowed us to find. Thanks for watching until the end. Goodbye. More to come.